Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, Dr. Scott here. I want to hop on real quick before we start with today's episode and let you know that our next 10-day challenge event registration link is live. It is found in the show notes for the dates and additional information. You can also go to www.thefastingforlife.com/live. That is www.thefastingforlife.com/live. And now to today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I am here as always with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Doing great, man. I absolutely am excited about the conversation today. This article that we came across, which is a monster, but I think it's going to have some really cool action steps and some takeaways. And it almost feels like something we could have been a part of when you read the introduction. So I'm going to start with that as the framework and kind of drop the bomb in your lap. And then I want to see kind of where the conversation goes. But I know that we have a couple really good action steps that are going to come out of this in terms of applying this to the fasting-friendly lifestyle, the insulin-friendly lifestyle, the lifestyle that you and I live and breathe every single day, and the conversations that we have with the people that are inside of our circle.
Yeah, and this is one that really struck some chords with me, just going through it year after year after year, a lot of calorie counting, a lot of, going on and off the diet roller coaster and the diet and exercise, and just not really understanding why I couldn't get a grasp on the scale and on my overall health. And I just, this one really just hit me hard.
Yeah, there's a few underlying themes here. We're gonna have the conversation around choices, right? We're gonna have the conversation around moving toward or away from your goal. But I really like the first sentence of the introduction. I'm just going to read it. The perpetual diet wars between factions promoting low carb, keto, paleo, high protein, low fat, plant-based, vegan, and seemingly endless list of other diets has led to substantial public confusion and mistrust in nutrition science. If I could not have articulated that better, and this is something that you and I talk a lot about with people that come into our Facebook groups and send us messages from the podcast. And I just want to put my hands up and yell preach, because we don't even, during our challenges, we don't even talk about food. We don't even really want to talk about food in the beginning, because what we're focusing on is the timing and the other things that come along with starting something new like fasting. So the food part is really almost like a secondary piece. We need to set the windows and talk about hunger cues and things that you can expect to feel and experience over the first 24, 48, 72 couple first weeks you're going through the process. But, you and I've done all of these except the plant-based, and I did do plant-based for a couple of weeks. In vegan, you can add in carnivore, you can add in Whole30s, you can add in, 21-day fixes and 28-day resets and all this other stuff. What I really like about the article is that they framed it in a way where they were looking at the conversation around processed versus unprocessed foods, or ultra-processed versus unprocessed foods.
Yeah, and when we talk about that, matching up the foods for the calories and for the energy that comes in with them, but basically putting the subjects into a fairly controlled environment, but just giving them access to these meals, and then tracking their weight over a 2-week period, and then flipping them into the other group. It's a really well controlled study, and this is a new one too, from 2021. And I couldn't agree more about, some of the mistrust that's out there, and the reason why we don't go into just the food specifics, especially in the very beginning, in an environment like the challenge, is because, most of us who've battled with this stuff, we've spent a lot of time trying to kind of piece together the food equation and the calories and tracking the macros and all that kind of stuff, but still not getting where we wanted to go. So the more time we spend on that is not getting at the root of the problem, when oftentimes just controlling the meal timing as the first main lever that we pull, and then tweaking, what we're eating and the composition to support those goals, is usually a much better way to get there, especially when we haven't had success in the past, right?
Yeah, and a lot of that food composition stuff and those decisions really comes down to the habits, right? So we're going to talk about, ultra processed foods, things like fast foods and prepackaged foods and all that kind of thing, compared to, unprocessed, which is stuff you kind of more make in your own kitchen. You go buy the ingredients from the outside of the grocery store, you come home and you make the meal.
Right.
But I like the way, so I want to set a couple of frameworks up here in terms of what the study and how it was set up. And this is out of the Journal of Cell Metabolism. And they match the meals for calories, which was big, for energy density, macronutrients, sugar, sodium, and fiber. And these were weight stable people. So these were not people that have any type of weight loss resistance or insulin resistance or the yo-yo dieting kind of history. Mm-hmm. These were people that had weight stability, and the average BMI in the group was 27, right? So we're not talking about, a lot of the studies that we reference that talk about insulin resistance and diabetes and those types of things study the higher BMI groups, right? So I really like that energy. But looking at these two groups, just right off the bat, you had said that they go through 2 weeks. So they were split into two groups, the ultra processed or the unprocessed group, and then they swap it, right? Mm-hmm. So each group goes through 2 weeks, which I thought was really cool. And, one of the main takeaways, was that they were trying to find out, because there is no proven causation yet in nutrition research where it shows that ultra-processed foods lead to obesity, right? So they were starting to kind of go down this new path of looking at it where, thinking that limiting the consumption of ultra-processed foods may be an effective strategy for obesity prevention and treatment. And when we talk about obesity, that's when we get into the blood sugar, the comorbidities, the heart disease, and all of those other different types of things that come along with having that extra weight, on the body.
Yeah. And much like they alluded to in the study, when any of us, kind of gets up the momentum and the gumption to kind of start a new weight loss and a new diet plan, when you get to that frustration point, like it might be a new high that you just saw on the scale, or something like a favorite piece of clothing that now doesn't fit quite right, and you just get to that frustration point, and then you say, okay, well, I'm going to hit it hard. I'm going to do everything different now. Like one of the first things that we always tend to just intuitively do is cut away the super ultra processed stuff. Like, if you're used to going to fast food restaurants or, eating certain kinds of food at a restaurant, you tend to kind of cut those things away as like obvious culprits. But at the same time, there's not really definitive research that says exactly why those are, so effective to cut away. I mean, obviously they're a part of the equation, but like you said, this study is going to look for some specific reasons, some causation behind it, which I think is really important.
Yeah, and that was so. And one of the things they looked at that I liked the framing of was the rise in obesity and type 2 diabetes occurs in a parallel with the increasingly industrialized, ultra processed food system that we have, right? Mm-hmm. So large scale production, high yield, inexpensive, the corn, soy, and wheat families of foods. They're refined, they're processed, so they have this ultra abundance, right? Yeah. So there is, just to be clear again, the thought process behind it was, there is no causal relationship so far between ultra processed food consumption and the obesity side of things. So the study was really designed to conduct a randomized controlled trial looking at the effects of ultra versus unprocessed. But this is the key part, which I really like, is with the ad libitum part of the energy intake, with the liberty and the choice to eat, within a certain time window. So each of the meals were matched. They were presented 3 meals, and they all had, a 60-minute time window. And what was shown is that the ad libitum group, the ultra processed group consumed, 500 more calories on average than the unprocessed group.
Yeah. And, at first when I was thinking about it and reading through the article, it kind of brought me back to, you remember in the movie Super Size Me, where Morgan Spurlock, right? He goes and then he's having fast food. I believe it was McDonald's every day for, 2 or 3 meals a day, for a month. And then, he's a human science experiment looking to see what was going to happen. But that's not realistic where most people aren't eating, that much fast food. And so it felt it was interesting, but it didn't seem
real life.
Right. Yeah. But in this study, what they point out too now is that the actual majority of calories that are consumed in the United States now fall under the ultra processed category. So it's not necessarily that they're just straight from fast food, but they do fall into the ultra processed category. So they are, mimicking the majority of calories and how they're kind of consumed at this point in time. So that is close to real life there. Yeah,
and one extra piece is that the majority of calories consumed are the ultra processed category, like you just said, but they've also been associated with very poor health outcomes. So it's like, kind of almost seems like a no brainer. Like, okay, yeah, well, that makes sense. Like, you kind of know of the Super Size Me guy. Like, yeah, I didn't know his name. So when you said that, I agreed with you, but totally was lying in the moment.
Thanks.
I just remember the construct. I'm not good with names and faces like that. But that there is that increased health effect, right? The poor health outcome, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and all the complications that come with it. So it was interesting, looking at the fact that the processed meals had a higher carb and fat content, not protein, and the ultra processed group gained, anywhere between 0.9 plus or minus 0.3 kilograms. So that's anywhere between 2 to 2.5 pounds. And then the non lost the exact same amount, but on the other end, right?
Right.
And that's typically what you'll see in like a new 4-week, I'm going to, eat less, move more, swap out the Chick-fil-A for the homemade chicken salad, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was interesting about the caloric density and how people, because they had the same amount of time, right? So the fact that you had mentioned something about the speed of eating, right? Like, it's really easy to consume 3 pieces of pizza in 5 minutes and versus eating the big, grilled chicken Cobb salad. Like, you're going to be there for a little while with the Cobb salad, and it's going to have, a much different, macro split than looking at the pizza. And it reminds me, I have a colleague who's out there, and he's not a big salad guy, but upon request of his wife, he's doing these salad reviews. So he's going around to all of these different places. Oh, cool. And the other day he was about to eat this salad, and he was like, oh, this is a big scary bite. Like, there was a bunch of like stuff on there that he doesn't normally eat, and he ate it, and he's just sitting there chewing and chewing and chewing. So the caloric density, yes, but also the speed at which we can intake those increased calories.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting, because what I expected the research article to say was that, well, it's hyper palatable, right? Where people would say that they enjoyed the ultra processed a little bit more and it was less filling, so they ate more of it. But they didn't find that at all. But what they found when they measured the actual eating and how did additional calories come in, you had a 500 calorie difference between what people were eating on the two sides of it. And so what they found was a much higher number of calories, per gram or per bite, and more bites per minute, like a faster rate of consumption. So it's literally just the fact that processing, like that mechanical industrial processing that happens to the food, that's happening before it actually gets to us and to our plate. So we don't need to process it as much when we're actually eating it. It's already done for us. It's kind of like drinking your smoothie versus, chewing on, the berries and the greens that go into it. We don't have to do that. So we can intake a whole bunch of it, a lot faster. And before it actually has a chance to tell us that we're full and we need to stop eating.
Yeah, I want to talk about some outcomes of the study too. So, the insulin secretion, the blood sugar, the body composition, right? Body energy stores, which was a huge one. But I really like the part of the speed, but also the convenience of it, right? So the consumer choices, this was in a lab setting, so it didn't allow for the consumer choice to set in. And that's going to relate to one of the takeaways, Tommy, in kind of, if the scale's stuck and you're not getting the results. Well, first of all, we'll talk about fasting and how you can skip a meal and just stack the deck in your favor. But that cost versus convenience. So they looked at the cost of it too, and the ultra process was less at $106 for the 3 meals, and the on was $151. Yeah. So, a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Well, eating healthy is expensive." Well, yeah, it is. And if you want to just kind of take that excuse or reason, I should say, out of the way, then skip a meal, start intermittent fasting, right? And only eat 2, and then you're going to level the playing field there, and you'll be at the same.
Absolutely.
Because a dollar menu at Wendy's, yeah, it's a dollar menu, but you get what you pay for, right? It tastes really good in the moment, but I just like that comparison too about the consumer choice and then also the cost associated with it.
Yeah, the back end cost is there too, because you might save money now on the dollar menu, but the cost of insurance and healthcare later on is right. Exponentially higher, right? So just understanding that, yes, ultra processed foods can be more appealing in the moment. The price tag alone can scare us away from some of the better foods and going towards more of the ultra processed ones. But understanding that, and like you said, using fasting, knowing that you don't have to necessarily intake as many meals, so the grocery bill can go down, means that you can kind of level the playing field. So I really love that perspective.
And the opportunity to just have one less decision to make throughout the day, right? So, I liked one of the takeaways, which was, framing this in a way that, that one thing, if your life doesn't involve the ability to have the Chick-fil-A, or the family pizza night, or the summertime, it's starting to warm up a lot. Well, it's been warm here in Texas for a while, but it's starting to warm up for a lot of people. Snow's melting, right? It's like, summer's coming. So, all right, yeah, let's go get the ice cream, that kind of thing.
Right.
The thing that normally would throw you off track in the past for me, those foods, right? The beer in my younger college days, the beer and wings, the pizza, the barbecue, like whatever it was in the different seasons of life, framing it so that, you have less eating opportunities throughout the week, less decisions to be made between the ultra processed and the eating at home type scenario. But really framing it that, making sure that you have that stuff included and something to look forward to rather than having to make that decision in the moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, when you mentioned pizza there, and it just keeps reminding me, like, I remember tracking the calories of some slices of pizza, like literally putting it into my app. And it's such an exercise in futility though, because it only took a couple of minutes to eat that slice of pizza, but for me to try to burn those calories on the back end without using a tool like intermittent fasting, I could go run 5 miles and go burn, an extra.
No, you can't.
Yeah. But even if I could, then,
I meant then. I didn't mean now. I meant back then. Yeah.
then, what am I going to do? I'm going to burn an additional maybe 300 calories versus if I had just been sitting on the couch, basically. So that might have been one of those pieces of pizza. But honestly, what I should have done would be skip lunch going into it beforehand and probably skip breakfast, the following day too, for, to make up for the additional calories that I brought in. So it just understanding that time works in your favor, and time is one of your most powerful tools that you have for this stuff, and for kind of balancing some of the processing and the ultra processing that we have in our food supply. I think is just a huge point.
Yeah, and there was some interesting data that came out of the study too in regards to the energy stores. So I like the framing of this where we're looking at, moving towards or farther away from our goal, long-term goal. Anybody can lose 10 or 20 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. It's keeping it off and having the lifestyle habits and mindset to, live that way and build that stuff kind of into your day-to-day life. And that's why fasting, we feel, is one of the best tools, and why we don't subscribe to just one type of fasting for everybody, or one food choice, menu choice for everybody, or one lifestyle choice. But I like the fact that, when they did the doubly labeled water body composition testing, they were looking at, using the body composition measurements to determine the body energy stores. This is something we talk a lot about when we talk about glycogen and, getting into a fat burning state, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And when they were comparing the two, the ultra versus the unprocessed, the ultra increased body energy stores increased by 300 kilocalories during the 2 weeks that they were eating the ultra processed diet, and decreased by 220. So over a 500
that was per day.
That's
per day. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Which equals what? Over a month, right? If we extrapolate those body energy stores and the glycogen stores, that's that within that 3 to 5 to 7 pound range, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then, extrapolate, that month out into a year. And then you're potentially talking about 20, 30, 40 pounds worth of difference there from storing fat, being in fat storage mode versus actually burning through it. And it's almost unfathomable, but it makes sense, based on how we take in, 500 calorie difference, in one day, just from how quickly we can get through those calories, and we can actually ingest those calories and then just extrapolate that over time. And that's a lot of how we actually accumulate weight over time.
Yeah. And it was interesting on the blood sugar side of things, when they were looking at the outcomes of looking at testing insulin and glucose, there wasn't really much change. There was a slightly, a slight elevation in the daily glucose levels, but not in the fasting glucose or the insulin resistant tests. And that goes back to the situation where, we're looking at a really short-term kind of goal. The HbA1c isn't done every day, right? Mm-hmm. A fasting, blood glucose test is really an indication of kind of where you are over the last 30, 60, 90 days. So it's that whole rust on a bumper example that we use a lot and I think it was Dr. Fungu who used that, where it really clicked for me, where if you just put metal in water for a day or two, you're not really going to see much change. If you leave it there over the next, 6 weeks to 6 months to 6 years, you're going to start to see that water causes the rust on that metal. Mm-hmm. So it made sense that there was not a big difference in the day-to-day blood sugar levels, or even in the insulin resistance over the course of the 4 weeks. Yeah. What was interesting, though, to me was the appetite suppressing hormone, PYY, increased during the unprocessed diet, right? Mm-hmm. As compared to both the ultra-processed and the baseline group. And also the hunger hormone ghrelin was decreased in the unprocessed diet compared to the baseline. So now we're getting somewhere where it's like, okay, is there some proof or causality between the hyperpalatability of the food and the texture of the food, and maybe the emotional component attached to those foods that you like to indulge in, right? Or take a diet break from, or, treat yourself type of mentality. So there comes into that component of like the emotional mental side of it too, but it's rooted in physiology. So we saw here in this challenge in this study, that those things were decreased. So decreased hunger, great. And your appetite suppressing hormone telling your body to stop, you don't need anymore, was actually increased.
Yeah. And that gets to the point where, we have some powerful mechanisms in the body. There's a gut brain, connection that's really, really strong to tell us when we're full, when we have all the nutrients that we need, when we're ready to stop eating. But what we see and what we intuitively know, as well as, what was shown in this study, was that, the more ultra processed foods bypass our actual, mechanisms, our physiological mechanisms in the body to actually help control the amount of calories and how much food we're actually ingesting. So I think that goes hand in hand. And again, a lot of the things that we just intuitively kind of know, like just cutting out the ultra processed foods and the fast foods, whenever we're on a diet or a quote unquote health kick, if it's kind of a diet roller coaster time, there are real reasons for these things.
Yeah, and I like the way that you framed kind of the biggest takeaway or the biggest action step. From just looking at this overall, there were some things that really made sense to us and aligned with kind of how we present the insulin-friendly lifestyle and fasting. And they even say, eliminating ultra-processed foods from the diet decreases the energy intake and results in weight loss. You can kind of surmise that. So how do we then apply it with what we're teaching?
Yeah, I mean, integrating what we see here and what we intuitively know, and kind of reconciling that with fasting. As an action step, as a takeaway, I'm going to encourage everyone to, take the next time you have something that's like one of your favorite things, or maybe it's an indulgence of some kind, or there's a social gathering, maybe you're going on vacation, have a plan going into that where you put a little bit more time separation, leading up into that meal and maybe coming off of after that meal as well. Give yourself a little bit more time to kind of burn through those additional calories that you brought in, so that you can level the playing field and kind of tip the scale back in your favor and keep things moving in the right direction versus where we know the ultra processed foods tend to push us in the wrong direction more.
Yeah, I really like that framing. Love it. Awesome. All right. Well, if you have been with us for a while, then you know that fasting has been had an incredible impact on our lives. And if you've been on this journey with us, we hope that you continue. If you're new to fasting and you want to learn more about what it is that we believe about what breaks a fast and how to put fasting into your day-to-day life, you can join our free Facebook group, Fasting for Life Community, or you can go to our website and download the free Fast Start Guide. This is framed around putting 1 meal a day fasting into your life. It is www.thefastingforlife.com. Sign up for our newsletter. And Tommy, as always, appreciate your time, sir, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Don't forget to head over to register for the next 10-day live fasting challenge. Registration is now open. It can be found at www.thefastingforlife.com/live. That is www.thefastingforlife.com/live. For dates and more information, you can find the link in today's show notes, and we will see you on the inside.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start Guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.